Hello there, everyone. Welcome to another exciting interview here. I am with the commander of the British First Corps, Rev Rick, otherwise known as John Crocker in the game.
Honest
Uh,
John Crocker.
Honest John Crocker, yes. And he's going to be as honest as he can with us about what his experience was during our D-Day game. You've likely already heard our interviews with Ike and Rommel, and so we're dipping into the Corps commanders now, getting a little bit closer to the action, or in the case of Rommel, maybe a little bit less close. Uh, so let's just dive in. What Of course, the first couple months, in fact, the first 4 or 5 months of this game was actually just a planning phase. I want you to go tell. I want you to tell us, uh, what was that planning phase like, and what ended up being the plan specifically for your core, and how did that kind of fit into the wider picture?
So the first conversations I was having with Ike and Dempsey, my um, Major General of the Army, he said basically that my primary objective from the start was to secure Cherbourg. The whole reason Ike set up the board this way, to my understanding, all the landings like he did, was instead of sort of going one, he had it confirmed that I tabbed a ping right over here on the Channel Islands of Jersey, where in real life the Germans had set up extensive naval forts there to try to you know um, bombard anyone trying to land. Um, on this side of the peninsula, that wouldn't be successful. And his recon basically said that the Germans had not done this. And the idea was if we landed on either side of the peninsula here at Normandy, um, at Ohio and Helena, and at Kite A and Kite B, we would basically be able to pinch Cherbourg from both sides. My I was the one, however, who was primary objective was to immediately take Cherbourg. Ohio and Helena, we're just sort of gonna try to, for my understanding, we're gonna try to capture the crossroads, going inland, try to cut off reinforcements from Cherbourg and expand the combat width against the Germans in this area. But I was pretty much always under the impression that it was gonna be my guys surrounding Cherbourg. Um, I was up until okay. Go back to my part of the planning phase before I go back into what actually happened. Right. I picked the landing position of the 6th Airborne, and I also picked who was going to land where. So if you look, I have this big beach here at Kite A, um, and the smaller beach here at Kite B. I My thinking was have the SSB land beforehand and on this smaller beach where it would be easier for them to they wouldn't have to walk as far off the beach to get to any bunkers guarding the beach as if they had landed at Kite A. And then I was going to have so that we had obviously the airborne touchdown. I don't know what time that was. Was that 0100 or 0300, something like that?
Oh, 100, yeah.
Yeah. And then I basically landed them back there because I wanted them to start seizing the roads to Cherbourg for the SSB to come up and to try to also to try if Kite B was going to be really contested landing, the parachuters could come down there and help take out naval defenses. And basically just get everyone moving inland as quickly as possible. Get everyone off the beach as quickly as possible, of course, is the goal. So, um, yeah, the airborne touches down. That's all successful. Of course, I had no idea what they were doing until I landed. I don't think I got on the beach until maybe like 0600, 0500, something like that. And then they took Le Pew, and they wound up sending one brigade, I believe. Um, God, I think I don't want to not give any of these brigadiers credit, but I'm pretty sure it was the sixth that got sent up to this area and wound up sweeping through here later. But that wouldn't happen for a while. But they basically got sent up here, and then I know the fifth was down here, and they helped out. Uh, Saint Germain. They basically secured this whole back area here. When uh, the 49th would have just been landing, and the fourth SSB was supposed to come down here, and the first SSB was also still down here, and the fifth basically did a ton of work here. The fourth was working their butt off trying to take La Rose, Siliere. There's a bunch of forts in here, right? And we were trying to keep the landing clear for the 49th, and the fourth did a lot of heavy work early on down here, and same with the fifth. If we it wasn't part of the plan, and basically he wound up deciding to come south here, and that was really crucial to keeping all this working really smoothly. If we hadn't had this extra brigade here, it would have taken a lot of time for the fourth to be done in Siliere, and then I think they went down to Certainville, and then we found out that there was this big German garrison in Saint Germain. And anyway, when we wound up getting all this cleared out, the 49th was pretty much able to steamroll the rest of the way in. So anyway, the goal of the 6th AB was to try to just get as close to Cherbourg as possible. If you look on my original plans, you'll find out that I thought we'd probably start finding another layer of heavy resistance around here, somewhere in this triangle of positions. And I also assumed that um, we would have to actually push a front line here ish. Let's say like yeah, something around. I'm just going to change the color from where I think the Germans are currently to like something like this. That there would actually be like a brigade force that we'd have to hold off from the north in order to make a play for Cherbourg. Um, I don't think that wound up happening. I mean, I can go into what actually happened up there in a minute. So once all this is secured, um, basically you get this guy. He keeps moving up here, and he gets engaged, and I very early in this sort of sector here. Yeah, Quitville. That's a familiar name. Hueyville, Vastaville. Um, and then I think the third brigade winds up coming up here. Um, and this was a really ingenious play by Sixth Airborne, and I want to give him absolute credit for this. Is I was sort of like I gave him a lot of leeway on this. I basically told him to try to like, you know, my goal was any Germans that engaged us between the landing and Cherbourg to meet them with as overwhelming opposition as possible. Once the stuff on the coast played out and it became clear to me that it seemed like in every engagement we could have the numbers advantage if we wanted to maybe not take our time but not bolt straight for Cherbourg. I wanted to get to Cherbourg with as few of Germans there as possible. So that was the goal. And then so it was actually you know what? I was wrong. I was wrong. It was first SSB that came up here. So sorry for not giving you credit for that. Yeah, and then 6th AIB was our vanguard for a while. And down here, I'm trying to remember the order these guys landed in. I'm not going to be able to. But yeah, basically there was an enemy fort here. So they wound up landing, taking that position. Yeah, one of them was kind of up here at Certainville, and then another one of them was down here. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to remember. So what I originally wanted, after I landed and there wasn't a ton of resistance here, I thought maybe we'd be able to actually go down here and link up with wherever Lance Beach was moving in, and I thought maybe we could rendezvous with them like here or here. It didn't really seem to be in the cards. Um, I told 49th to be careful because basically the data I had gotten was sorry, I'm jumping back and forth. This is kind of in my planning phase. I was really scared about the third Fallschirmjäger being somewhere in this area. And it wasn't until we were basically landing that I got confirmation that the third Fallschirmjäger was not going to be around here, but I still wasn't totally sure about that intel. And I'm not quite sure how I got that. So after here, there was probably a couple German companies between the coast and here for 49th, but basically 49th's big objective was to take Brick-Quebec, and I wasn't even sure that they were going to get to Brick-Quebec, especially if they were facing like heavy confrontation. But yeah, basically the idea for the 49th was to establish a front line, something like this, to give the airborne and the first SSB the ability to get to Cherbourg. The fourth SSB was supposed to help take Brick-Quebec with the 49th. And if you were to interview them, I'm sure they would remember that I was actually telling them to leave several companies here, and then have basically a brigade force like from here break off and kind of probe down into here and along the coast and all this stuff. I wanted them to like really break up companies and kind of like send them out on these probes into here to see if there's anything here or if we could pull everything up. And they really weren't running into much resistance, and they got really emboldened. So I think they might have probed down there a little bit with their companies, but I think they almost kind of disregarded that and just kind of kept everything moving along, which in hindsight was definitely for the best. Um, that's sort of something I'd really say about my soldiers is when they did what they felt was the order of the day, and even though it might have gone not been entirely what I had been planning, it was extremely effective and extremely successful, and they told me that they were doing it, and that really is what kept the combat force together. And similarly, so they wound up, um, yeah. So fourth SSB, after they fought on the beach down here, where are they? They're over here. So they moved up. I want to say through here, something like that for sure. And they wound up at some point during this, they ran into a tiny little skirmish, but Brick-Quebec was almost entirely undefended, and that really caught me off guard because I had put all these assets down here into taking Brick-Quebec. There was basically nothing there. Um, yeah, and we're kind of keeping all these guys moving up. 70th was definitely in the rear. 146th, yeah, and basically, yeah, we wound up getting to the fourth SSB takes Brick-Quebec, and that was their goal. And so I was pretty pleased about that. Up here, this was a bit more of a complicated situation. So there were some bunkers in Soyville and Quintetville. Maybe there wasn't a bunker in Quintetville. These guys, the first SSB, they were kind of alone up here. The sixth SSB had ran into trouble. Trying to remember the names of these towns at this point. It gets a little stretched, but um it was on this river system. It was like in here. Basically the 6th SSB runs into some resistance, and we have just blown so far to Cherbourg. I'm fine with them taking their time at this point. Yeah, and the third was probably, I don't know, that's a guess, like around there somewhere. And then the fifth was kind of like I said, the fifth was instrumental in cleaning up Saint Germain and all this. They came south, and that was another thing that wasn't in the orders. And before I landed and I had like solid contact with everybody, um, they specifically fourth SSB, I think, asked Sixth Airborne to send a battalion or send a brigade south. and he did. Sixth Airborne did that. And if the fifth hadn't gone south, I do not know that we would have gotten out of Kaide so quickly. And the fact that he did that, it shows really excellent leadership and on their behalf. And I don't know, it was stuff like that that allowed us to get so close to Cherbourg and actually get into the city. So with naval gun support, I think I wound up authorizing some for him. 6th AAB sort of, gets up here, and I'm gonna delete that front line because again, this wasn't. I didn't think that was ever there. I thought that might be there, and he winds up kind of fighting his way through up here to Flopman Hag, and third PIB is probably somewhere around here. Fifth PIB is bringing up the rear still, and first SSB winds up fighting their way to Vastaville. And I give third PIB. So the Germans here, I'd like to give them absolute credit. Whoever was defending up here mounted a hell of a defense against my guys. They were up against 4 brigades, and I really don't think they had that kind of strength, at least not in this sector, like this specific kind of square area. And essentially what happened is, yeah, they were giving the first SSB a fight for their lives. These guys were reporting the whole time that they were scared, and I took it really seriously. So 6th AIB, like I said, I told them not to bother advancing on Cherbourg and to work on completely destroying um, the forces in this area and trying to just capture them wholesale. So 6th AIB comes up here so that they can't retreat to Cherbourg. Third comes in from this area over to here, and it was really, from my recollection, it was really only when we got these 2 brigades over here fighting in conjunction that I think they captured a brigade, and or not a brigade, they captured probably like a company or 2, and then the rest of the forces from this area wind up falling back to Brandville. Where's Brandville? Just north. Yeah, there's Brandville. So I send the 5th up to pursue them. I send the 1st up to here, and I know that there's going to be a fort in Noainville. Um, sorry, the 6th engages the fort in Noainville. 1st is moving up through here. Yeah, and they go to Corville, Irville, Hague area. That's where the 1st is. And the 3rd's coming up here ish. And the 6th reports to me that the 5th Parachute Infantry Battalion starts getting engaged around Brandville. This is all, at this point, I'm past here, this area, which again, that's where I thought I would be pretty optimistic to get on day 1. I thought if I could clear all that out, I thought if I could get to here, that I would be up against a relatively equivalent force of frontline, kind of like I said, here. And I thought, yeah, I'd stall out my offensive towards Cherbourg around here. And I thought maybe I could take Brick-Quebec. And if I could take Brick-Quebec, um, mm, you know, maybe around here, and kind of have a front line like that and be pretty pleased with myself and have my flanks well defended, that kind of thing. I was originally going to have an entire brigade, like I said, holding this front line. And I think it was going to be the 147th holding this front line. And then, yeah, having these assets ready to keep moving up towards Cherbourg. But like I said, we did quite a bit better than that. So, let me just clean up these lines real quick. Okay. So let me think. Yeah, around a little afternoon, these guys start getting up here. They and the Americans are having trouble getting off their beach. This might be like closer to 1 o'clock, but yeah, the Americans are having trouble getting off their beach, and Ike calls me and he asks if I can help secure Valonius. If there's any assets I can move over there for that. And so essentially, the plan was to send the fourth S the because the offensive against Cherbourg had been going so well. I said yes, and it was the fourth and the 146th that got sent to Valonius. There wound up being a couple companies, which were trying to interdict the 147th's movement into Brick-Quebec, right around here on Quetotville. And so it was just a couple companies. So although I was worried it would be a trap, again, my goal was any German probe, any German position we saw, to grab it and capture it. I didn't, like I said, that was the same thing, the same strategy I tried to use down here. That was the same strategy I used in, chasing multiple companies, probably around like Brigade, up to Branville. And I sent, yeah, the 147th after them. And I told the 147th to try to fan out and to herd those guys towards Cherbourg, because my thinking was, if we can chase them to Cherbourg, I don't know, let's say it's these guys. The idea was the 6th could receive them, and they would run into the 6th. We'd surround them, surrender them, have one brigade be processing them, uh, and the other brigade free to enter. Um, I don't think they wound up getting that far. I think they were probably like around here. And when by the end of the match, when I was asking them where they were, um, where the Germans they were pursuing were, I'm not sure they were still. I think they were probably like still being pursued, but they weren't. The Germans had managed to disengage a bit, so I'm not really exactly sure what wound up happening with this fighting. But nonetheless, the 147th played a critical role in allowing the 70th. I told the 70th, excuse me, I told the commander of the 49th that essentially, under no pretext could he had the divisional artillery support, or, yeah, divisional artillery support, right? It was an entire artillery brigade. That was the most artillery assets we actually had in country. I told him that under no circumstance could Cherbourg be left without artillery support. Um, and so, but I was also scared about Valonius. So I was looking for bricks. I'm trying to find bricks now. If you can help me find it, it's on this road. Brix. Yeah, here. Okay. So bricks is in is like around bricks. You would be able to say have your 70th up here, and these guys. This is divisional artillery with them. The idea was, if I can split the divisional artillery in half and have half of it be with a couple companies of the 70th guarding it a couple miles closer to Cherbourg, and then have half of it be like sort of down here, a couple miles closer to Valonius. It would be within somewhat effective barrage distance of both, and it wouldn't have been ideal. Like it wouldn't have been able to as accurate as if I had obviously moved it further in either direction towards either city. But he was pretty adamant that he wanted to keep it at least a brigade, and the idea was, kind of keeping it dynamic. Wanting keeping my options available here, and so the idea was, yes, 70th Brigade could have either reinforced Cherbourg or Valonius, and would be able to, defend divisional artillery, and divisional artillery wouldn't be able to would have been able to support either Valonius or Cherbourg or both, depending on what was going on. They wound up marching up to Valonius, or excuse me, to Brix, and by endgame, there was actually a secret huge German rocket installation in there. I don't know, I give the details on that. We had seen them flying earlier in the day, and I had kind of wondered what they were, but um, So he sort of happens upon that, and this is also where I was. I was staying with the 70th, um, and yeah, he winds up finding that German rocket installation, and that was literally like the last turn that he found that. Um, so yeah, I spent a while waiting for these guys to get into Volonius. And when they do, um, I had been asking the well, that would have been Major General Grau of the American Fifth Corps, sort of what's going on. Because around here, Fourth SSB is reporting that they don't see a defensive perimeter around Volonius. And basically, they asked me like, "Hey, Chief, should we bypass Volonius entirely?" Um, and uh I sort of told him like no, like it's such like an essential point that we want to we want to make sure it's secured. And so these boys wound up coming in the rear, and I suppose some American Rangers, I believe they were attacking from like this side, um are engaged with the rest of like the German resistance there. And yeah, Bernard, this is Jumbo is reporting that they were it looks like a lot of the defensive positions in Volonius had been abandoned. And so I'm sure what that was is the Germans had all established a defensive line along this side of the town against the Rangers, whoever was left there. But I think most of the garrison of Volonius had been called out to confront the Americans, which I'm sure was a bit of a desperate move. And these guys wound up coming in here and flanking most of the soldiers engaged against the American Rangers. And I think they got you know several companies surrendered to them. I'm not sure about the exact numbers. And then basically then the 146th came in. I wanted the 146th to process the prisoners, while the fourth would go on to try to. There was a German HQ in the town we wanted secured. And so yeah, these guys, it was unfortunate they didn't get to see more combat throughout the game, these two brigades, but they did get to take Valognes at the last minute, and props to them for that. They were really instrumental there, and I'm sure the Americans appreciate their support.
And
Um,
so
yes, sir.
we're running out of time here. I just want to
Yeah,
ask one more quick question.
yeah,
Uh, what was it like commanding so many subordinates? Do you think it helped with immersion?
yeah, definitely. And I mean, I was gifted with these guys because, like I said, they were capable of thinking independently. They were capable of making their own decisions. They didn't just do blindly what I said all the time. And they were definitely very tactically capable maneuvering. Like I said, I mean, Sixth Airborne pulling off that little stunt where they got they basically cut off the Germans they were engaged with down here by and funneling them towards Branville. Um, that was genius. And if I could just finish up with one thing, is one of the last decisions that I made that was like a super big question, regarding the position of brigades, is we dispatched the third Parachute Infantry Battalion Brigade to support the fifth up here in Branville. And again, that was going to mean that my initial probe into Cherbourg, what was intended to be my initial probe into Cherbourg, was going to be less supported. There was going to be a brigade less there. But my thinking was, once these forces at Branville were finally dealt with, that would mean that this whole sector, whatever the Germans had managed to keep here, would be disposed of. And then that would leave these two brigades for the second wave into Cherbourg. Um, and yeah, they had basically just finished dispatching the last German defense over here. Sorry, that was just one thing I wanted to say. And you know, really, it was the communication that these guys gave me that um, I couldn't have asked for better communicators, and I couldn't have asked for better tactical thinkers. And yeah, I'd love these guys. I'd play with them again in a heartbeat.
All right. Well, thank you so much for giving us your perspective on the D-Day game.
Yeah, of course.
And so, for those of you watching or listening, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you with the next Corps Commander interview. Thanks so much.
Yeah, cheers.